Hello, hello, friends, and welcome to the Photographer Podcast. My name is Jaime, and I am your host, and I help family photographers book family photography clients 24/7 off of their website so they can get off of social media and start living their life. And I am so excited to dive into today's podcast because I have Lyndsay Hannah Photography joining me, and she is based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I think she's got like 2 feet of snow right now. And she's a family branding photographer as well as an educator. So I'm going to hand it over to her so she can introduce herself. But I just want to tell you thank you so much for joining. I am so excited to have you on here, and you have got so many amazing things to share, and I can't wait to dive in. So welcome.
Thank you, Jamie. It's so good to be here. You are correct. We are under 2 feet of snow right now, and we have a nor'easter predicted to come again this weekend. So lucky us. As you said, I photograph families, newborns, brands, and a few elopements, as well as teach a class on Flash and also do mentorships. And I have been a photographer for, let's see, 11 years now. And I live, like you said, outside of Boston with my husband and my 3 boys and 2 cats.
Amazing. And I have my cat Gizmo here with us, and I think yours are behind you here. So
They are.
little kitty cat podcast too here. So anyone that is new to you that has not heard of you before, tell
Yes.
us how you got started in photography.
Yeah, I feel like I have such a boring origin story because I think a lot of women who are in the family photography industry can probably relate. But I had been in marketing and sales, your cat, marketing and sales before I had kids. And then once I had my first, he was a pretty high needs infant, enough that I decided to quit my job and thought that I was going to stay home with him full time. And I did for a year, but during the course of that year, I just missed having kind of the more business part of my brain activated, and that like rush that you get from success, and it's just a different feeling than motherhood is. I liked both, but I missed that aspect of my life. And photography had always been a hobby for me. My parents gifted me my first DSLR as a college graduation present. And before I had my first son, I think I mostly spent time photographing travel whenever we'd go somewhere, or, inanimate objects around the
Mhm.
house, or our cats that we had back then. But once I had him, I kind of rediscovered, or discovered for the first time, the joy of photographing humans, and practiced a lot on him over that first year. And as I was thinking, what can I do that's not full time so that I can be more present for him, but also give my brain something that is a break from the day to day of motherhood? I
Mhm.
thought, maybe I could turn this hobby into a business. So I opened my business right after he turned 1, and then kind of built at first part time and transitioned into full time as my kids got older and went into school longer hours. I was able to kind of transition. It kind of grew with me as they grew.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that about wanting to do more after you became a mother, because I think so many of us, I know I did, I felt really guilty for wanting something
Yeah,
different. But the reason I wanted it different is because I could be a better version of myself, and a mom. I would have more time, create my own schedule. And a lot of people didn't really understand. And I already had a career. So they're like, well, why are you working even harder? Like now you can kind of be in this mode where you can just do these things, but you do need, or at least I did. And I think a lot of us that do this need, we just need that other part of our brain firing and to be creative. So I love that you mentioned that, because if anyone's listening, you do have permission to do something else. Especially as a mom, you don't have to feel guilty about wanting something different, and it can be for your family and be amazing. So what you have,
absolutely. And it gave, I think, the perfect balance. I mean, this job is hard because it's
Mhm.
all different hours. It's not traditional hours, but I think I appreciated that aspect of it so much when my kids were younger, because my oldest and my middle and my youngest were not great or never took a bottle. So I was breastfeeding around the clock,
Yep.
and this job allowed me to not feel guilt because I could go away for just a couple hours to do a photo shoot and then come back. And
Right.
that gave me kind of the brain break to focus on something else, to kind of take me out of how all consuming motherhood can be in those early days. but then
Mhm.
also, I guess, lessened my guilt about leaving because I could come right back. And, I
Mhm.
was able to back then transition my schedule in a really nice way so that I was home with them during the day and then I would do photo shoots after my husband came home. He works traditional hours. So I was able to
Mhm.
go away at nights and on weekends. And that worked for our family really well when my kids were younger.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tell me about in your early days of growing your business. So, how long did it take before it felt like it was real? Or did you feel like it was real right when you started? Did you have any imposter syndrome? How did that feel? And when did it feel like, okay, I have a business?
It's funny. I feel like we almost, and I know you've been a photographer for a while too. I feel like we
Hmm.
almost lucked out in the sense of when we started in 2015,
Hmm.
Instagram was just starting and it wasn't really as business focused as it is now. So I'm not even sure imposter syndrome was a word that was used or tossed around back then because there just wasn't as much sharing of work. It wasn't this endless scroll where you saw people making beautiful photographs all the time that you were comparing yourself to. So I
Very
think
true.
I felt like it was a real business right away, and I didn't have as much exposure to what other people were doing then as I
Hmm.
do now, or as
Yeah.
photographers who are starting in the industry right now would. So yeah, I also had low expectations. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a year. So
Hmm.
it wasn't as if I was in a position where I was leaving a full-time income and needed this to be full-time to replace it right away. We had sold our house and downsized into a smaller apartment because I had wanted to stay home. That was my initial intention. So the first year, I'm pretty sure I only made 6 grand, but it was 6 grand that we had never made before. And the barrier to entry for this job is so low. I think I only spent, I don't know, $500 on equipment. I had an entry level DSLR and one lens. So making $6,000 seemed fine to me then. And then
Yeah.
the business grew slowly from there, kind of as I wanted it to.
Hmm.
I think had I entered now and
Hmm.
had I been trying to replace a full-time income, I think I would have felt a lot more pressure. But the way it kind of grew with my family, I didn't
Hmm.
feel as much pressure back then.
That's awesome. I love that for you.
Yeah,
I did not feel that way when I grew mine, but I love that it just kind of did its thing and it grew with you and you grew with it. So I love that. And
exactly.
at
Yeah.
that stage, did you ever imagine that what you'd have now and you'd be running a multiple six-figure photography business?
No, definitely not.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what were you doing before you became a mother? Like, were you in a different, like completely different area than what you're doing now? Like, was it similar? What were you doing before?
So I went to school for marketing and hospitality management. So I worked in hotels, and then most recently before I left my job, I was a sales director at a luxury event venue that mostly did weddings, but some corporate events as well. But I did sales and marketing for them. So is it directly related? No, but do I probably use some of the people skills and sales and marketing skills that I used in my job? I'm sure that I do.
Yeah, I'm sure it does help you. I mean,
Yeah,
I think I see, I know you've been a photographer for a long time, but I do see so many things that you do so well. So, I think you're very well rounded
thank
in
you.
all aspects of the business and
Thank
photography.
you.
I do see that. So, and I kind of asked you two questions at once, sorry. But when you were new at that and you couldn't imagine that multiple six-figure business, like what would you, when you look at that now and like Lindsay the first year, what would you tell her now that you look back?
Gosh, I don't know. It's so funny. I feel like it was just this organic growth that happened. So
Hmm.
I didn't imagine it, but I didn't not imagine it either, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I knew that I was growing year over year. So the first year, I think I made 6,000, and the second year it was up to 24,000, and then the next year it was up to 60. And then, I'm just making up these numbers, but they're similar. So it took probably 4.5 to 5 years until I made 100,000, that first benchmark.
Yeah.
And it grew so organically that I think I would just tell her to keep doing what she was doing. I didn't feel stressed
Hmm.
about it at the beginning. I think I feel more stressed now to maintain the income level that I'm at
Yeah.
than I did back then because in the beginning, I think if you're working at it and you're learning SEO and you're building your website and you're upgrading these things, and you're raising your price year over year, which happens a lot in that growth phase in the beginning.
Yeah.
It feels, and I'm going to say this with a grain of salt and quotations, it feels easy to
Mhm.
achieve more than you made the year before because you're in growth mode. So
Right.
I think that I don't have anything that I would change or tell Lyndsay of 11 years ago to do differently. I think just working on each piece little by little, and slowly growing, not feeling like, and again, this might be because there wasn't the whole pressure of seeing what everyone else was doing on Instagram as much then as
Yeah.
there is now. But not, I started out only with just a basic DSLR and one 50 millimeter lens. And I don't think I
Yeah.
felt the need to grow that. And I worked off a laptop, and those were really the only pieces of equipment I had. So
Mhm.
I think that building slowly and realizing that you don't have to be constantly trying to achieve the next and best, greatest thing. Your business will grow and you will come to a point where you're like, okay, I am at a point where I really could use another lens because XYZ.
Mhm.
Or I'm at a point where now I think my website isn't serving me and I need to invest in a
Yeah.
full, website rebrand. And now I'm at a
Mhm.
point where I could use a whole desktop computer setup. I think it
Mhm.
comes naturally over the course of your business, and people don't have to feel intimidated to jump right in 100%. It's okay if you start at
Yeah.
10% and then grow to 25 and then 50 as your business grows.
Yeah. I love that. It takes the pressure off too.
It does. It
I wish I
does.
would have heard you say that when I started, because I was putting so much pressure on myself. I wish I would have done that. I would have told myself like the same thing you
Yeah.
said, like we'll get there. It's okay to be at 10%, like you have an infant,
Yes.
and then I had a 3 year
Yes.
old and a baby. So like give yourself some
Give
grace.
yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think throwing a whole bunch of money at the next best equipment or having all the lenses or having the
Yeah.
top computer is what's going to get you better. Getting
Mhm.
out there and getting clients and practicing and shooting is what's going to,
Absolutely.
bring you more education and more skill. And in turn, then translate to more bookings, which will translate to more income, which will naturally grow what you need and what your business can afford.
Yeah. So it seems like you were really patient with yourself and you let your business grow. You grew with it and it grew with you, which I love. But is there anything that when you were growing your business that you look back now that you were doing that wasn't working?
Oh, that's a tough question because I feel like everything that I probably did that wasn't working was also important to learn for growth
Yeah.
and struggle and
Mhm.
pivoting and deciding what I wanted to do. I mean, I think this is
Mhm.
something that everyone did, but I feel like back then I felt the pressure when I was in growth mode to say yes to everything that came my way, which I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, Whether it was, a cake smash or, an extended family session or a event that maybe I didn't feel excited about photographing.
Mhm.
And looking back though, even if maybe that wasn't a good fit for me, or maybe, I shouldn't have said yes, I still am glad that I did say yes to all these other things because until you try something and decide, that's maybe not the right fit for me, how can you really know and move forward? But I think if I was telling someone now, what to do differently or what they should look for, it's that you can say yes to all those things because sometimes people are transitioning from a job where they had an income and they need to meet that certain income level. You can say yes to things just for the money, but that doesn't mean that you have to talk about it or share it.
Right.
We all get these inquiries that might not be our perfect niche or our perfect fit, but
Mhm.
I think we learn something from every opportunity that we take, whether it's that we unexpectedly liked aspects of it or didn't like any of it or whatever it is. Sometimes it's okay to do things that may not be fully aligned just to try it out or just for the money, and that's okay.
Yeah, totally. I have a student right now that was so a little backstory. Lindsay and I finally got to meet in person at the Elena Espalier retreat, which was so awesome. And it was so nice to finally meet you and not just see you on a little Instagram bubble. I was like, oh, you're real. And so we got to spend some time together, which was so amazing. And some of the students that I have in my course right now, they were there, and one of them tried boudoir, and I don't believe she had ever done that before. And that was one
Yeah.
of the course's little talks that we had, and she just loved it. And I love I've done it, and I love seeing people do where they say yes to something. They're like, oh, I don't offer that. It's like, well, just try it and see. And if you hate it, then you know, which is just as important as if you end up
Exactly.
loving it. So I love that you talk about like saying yes and then learning like, okay, that's not for me. Because I did that with weddings. I quickly knew
Yeah.
like, no way. Like maybe elopements I would do, but weddings I was like, this is way too much pressure. It's just not enjoyable for me. So
Yeah, and I did weddings for a few years too, and I think I enjoyed it in the beginning, and then as our family grew and then I had a newborn, I was like, "Oh, this is just this doesn't work for my family." But I think I'm glad that I tried all these things, and I think I would tell everyone, in the beginning, just try a whole bunch of things even if it doesn't feel right. I think now with so many photography educators who have a platform now, there's a lot of talk out there about niching down. But I guess I would caution everyone to not niche down too early because you really don't know. Like you said with the boudoir, you don't know until you try. You don't know that something is not for you. You might find that you love it. And even if you don't, you're going to learn something from every person that you have the opportunity to photograph, every event that you experience. It's going to teach you something that will help you move your business forward.
yeah, absolutely. Amen to that. So I want to dive into your flash here in just a
Sure.
second. I want to ask you a couple more
Yeah.
questions about your journey because I
Yeah.
think it's
Go ahead.
fascinating. Um, so if someone's listening right now and they hear like, oh, Lyndsay Hannah, she makes multiple six figures a year and she's super successful, what would you tell someone that is thinking that success is just not for me or it'll never happen?
Well, first of all, that I don't know. I'm not sure that I equate finances, like what you make, with success. So someone might say, I don't want to be that busy. And I think that's totally fine. That is the best thing about this job. We're all entrepreneurs and we can make this business whatever we want it to be. So if your goal is to be home with your children 75% of the time and you only want this to ever be part time, you want to be purposely part time, that is success too. Success is whatever is aligned with what you want because this is your business.
Yep.
So for me, this has worked out. Like I said, it grew with my family. So in the beginning, I think I was more purposely part time. And my income level wasn't what it is today. But today, my kids are 7, 9, and 12, and they're all in school full time. So I will want this to be full time because I love it and I have those full time hours to give. Back in the day, I didn't. So I'm
Right.
not sure that I necessarily feel any more successful today as a multiple six-figure photographer as I did back when I was making 75,000 and only working part-time. I still felt like that was all that I could handle or wanted to handle then. So I think success and the financials, are intertwined, but not the end all be all. So I think, sorry, that was a
No, I
tangent,
love
but
that.
yeah, so I think that's important to know. And then what was the other part? What was the second half of that question?
Just, what if somebody does want that to be a
Oh, if they
part
do.
of me? Because I
Yeah.
agree with you. Like, I think building something from absolutely nothing from scratch, if you can make $1, I think that's amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
But it also depends on your season of life, what you actually want. Because I think a lot of people go into this, they're thinking like, I want to make six figures because that's like the magic,
Yeah,
amazing number.
that's that buzzword right now.
Yeah, it's the buzzword, and I agree with that. I wanted to get there too, and I finally did. But
Yeah.
like when I got there, I was like, I actually need to make quite a bit more to do the
Yeah.
things I need to do for my life. So
Yes.
I gently reminded myself, like, you know what, you are kicking some serious ass. You have got to remind
Yep.
yourself you built this from nothing. So I think that is really great. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think that will resonate with so many listeners. But if someone is listening and they're like, I do want to make multiple six
Yeah.
figures,
Yeah.
how about that? If they're like, I'll never be able to do that.
So I think it can feel unobtainable. I don't think I ever expected that I would be making
Mhm.
300,000 today when I was
Mhm.
back only making 50,000. But I think I
Mhm.
have a few different things that I would say. The number one, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is
Yeah.
I don't really agree with the sentiment out there that you have to niche down. I think
Mhm.
that not niching down, I shoot multiple things,
Mhm.
is one of the reasons why I've been financially successful because something like brands is in their peak of their interest in Q1. And that is
Yep.
when the lowest interest, at least in New England here, is
Same
for
here.
families. So when families are lower, I have something else. I have elopements, I have babies being born, and I have businesses who want to update their marketing images for the new year. So I think having multiple income streams, whether that's from different photography genres, education, whatever it is that you're pulling in streams from, I think diversifying and not having all your eggs in one basket is super important. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, look back in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Photographers who only shot weddings and events were left with no income when events weren't able to
Yeah.
happen. But those of
Mhm.
us who did outdoor family were okay because after, we
Mhm.
reopened, I think, for business in like May, small businesses were
Yeah.
allowed to work with parameters. And we were able to get back outside and start making an income when large gatherings and weddings didn't come back for years. So I think for me, I'm not saying that you have to shoot many things. If you only love one thing, by all means, go for it. But I think that there's a lot of pressure out there from educators right now that are constantly telling people that they have to niche down. And now, is it easier for marketing if you have one specialty? Yes, of course. But I think closing yourself off just for the purpose of niching down can not necessarily be the best financial decision. I think also, another thing to note is brands and newborns happen mostly during the week in the morning, whereas outdoor families, you only have a certain number of sunsets and a certain number of sunny days per year. So if you're
Yep.
doing things that happen at different times, that can also help you maximize your income because you're able to say yes to more things per month when they're not all happening during this one golden hour outdoor time that is finite. Um, and then the other thing I would say is that I don't think you should ever stop learning. So each year, even if you're at a certain point, there's always something more to learn. Whether you decide to invest in an SEO audit or an SEO course, like what you teach people, or like this year, I'm in an intensive class for meta ads to learn all about that. I don't think there's ever a point in that because this being an entrepreneur is so multifaceted, there's so many different aspects that go into it. The photography is such a small portion of it.
Yeah.
There's always more to learn on how to market yourself and what channel to market yourself and how to work on your SEO and blogging. And there's always something to work on. And I think
Yeah.
if you focus your efforts on thinking about the future of your business as well as what's happening now. So like what's happening now would be what you need to get done this week, like your emails, responding to clients and your editing, and then any photo shoots you have taking place. But you also have to carve out time to think about long-term growth and what you can do to learn more and prepare your business to grow and be successful in the future.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you say like don't niche down too much because I did in the beginning, which was great for me at the time, but then I was like I quickly learned like winter got slow for me where I
Yeah,
live.
yeah,
And that's where I started thinking about travel photography and then brands, things like that. And I will say the year after I learned brands, that winter, spring, it saved me. And I was so
yeah,
grateful I had done it. And it paid really well. So I was like, this is actually really nice. And it was during the week. So I
yeah,
think I had one on a Saturday, but I mean, I didn't mind. I was making good money
yeah.
and it was great. So I love that you say that. Like, I think it's okay to like niche down, get good at something, but also like, then you can kind of explore
Then
other
you can
things.
branch out.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And the other thing to note, and again, you probably know this because it sounds like your business has grown with your kids too, but we're all going to go through different phases. Like back
Yeah.
when my business was new and my kids were little, when I
Mhm.
really only did outdoor families, it worked well because it was
Yeah.
nights and weekends, and that was when my husband was home and we could trade off on childcare. But
Yeah.
now, as my kids grow, I want to pull back on how many nights and weekends I'm gone because that's
Wow.
the only time I have with them now since they're in
Right.
school all day. So
Yep.
the health of your business and your family will also go through these peaks and valleys as your kids grow, your business grows, your family changes.
Mhm.
So I think exploring different options, different types of photography that happens at different times of day or,
Mhm.
different times of the year is important for that too, because it gives you options.
Yeah. So speaking of trying new things, I want to talk
Yes.
about your Flash course, which I personally took and it's amazing.
Thank you.
And I want to talk about that. I think you didn't love Flash at first. Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, used to do weddings. So my experience with Flash was mostly seeing event type flash, which is a very
Mhm.
different type of flash than I use now. It's punchy and dramatic, and it was mostly used for wedding receptions and all of the different Facebook groups or classes that I was in for wedding photography really utilize that more dramatic kind of party type lighting. So that's kind of what I had in my brain as being what flash was, other than studio photography where I pictured, those gigantic stationary lights pointing at one spot with a backdrop, which wasn't the type of photography I do as a lifestyle photographer either. So, yes, my journey to from not really using flash at all to loving flash now had a lot of ebbs and flows because I realized quickly, I guess it was 6 years ago now, that I was struggling in home, especially in the winter during this time of year when the light is low, and we have a lot of antique homes in this area of the country with very little lighting or strangely positioned windows. So
Yeah.
I realized that I needed flash. I was struggling in sessions when I was having my ISO up so high that my images were grainy, and there were some rooms that I wasn't able to shoot in at all, and I didn't feel good about that. I had become a lifestyle photographer because I wanted to incorporate people's homes, like their personality and their individual living situations into their photos. That's why I've never been that interested in having a studio for lifestyle, family, or newborn sessions because I didn't want them all to look the same. I wanted it to be like that rocking chair that you always sit in with your baby, and that couch that you guys snuggle on, and that kitchen that you prepare your meals in. I wanted that to be the backdrop, but I was struggling to be able to create pretty light in these homes that didn't have good light, basically, which happens year round, but was even worse in the wintertime. So that's when I started sort of trying to incorporate flash. And initially, yes, I absolutely hated it. I tried on camera flash and it was awful and really held up the flow of me trying to work in a fast paced session with toddlers.
Yeah.
And it looked so flashy to me that that's kind of when I started deep diving into how can I make this better.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, what didn't you like about Flash before you discovered your approach? Was it that it looked like you had a flash on?
Yes, it didn't give that. I think what I always loved about natural light was that it was so beautiful. Like it made your skin look beautiful. Like when
Yeah.
you got that natural light to fall directly right, that
Hmm.
pocket of light, it was just so flattering and just
Yeah.
looked beautiful on everyone, on newborn skin, on adult skin. There's just something about light. And I think I fell in love with light from photographing families outside, and how
Yeah.
to make that beautiful, sunset, golden
Mhm.
hour, just soft light look great, which is what I was always trying
Mhm.
to find indoors, but had a lot of struggles as time went on. So I didn't love how it kind of looked harsh. It kind of gave that like
Mhm.
not deer in headlights look, but a little bit when it's too
Yeah.
flashy. It just doesn't look the same. It doesn't have the same quality as natural light.
Mhm. What changed when you realized Flash doesn't have to look flashy? Like, when did you realize that?
So I realized that when I figured out a method with off camera flash that could
Mm.
help. And I could figure out how to make a room look well lit and look beautiful in the same way that natural light from a window looked. And when I realized that, I think that's the turning point where I slowly was like, oh my God, I can use this method to make any room look good. So I can finally shoot in that awfully dark nursery that somebody really loves because they spend time with their baby in there, or in that house, even if it's raining outside, it happens to be raining on the day that they've prepared for their newborn session, I can still make it look beautiful. And I think that kind of freedom to be able to create natural looking light anywhere anytime was what really pushed me over the edge into falling in love with it.
So one reason, the thing you said to me, I think you said it to me, or I heard you say it when you said I was going into a home and I was like, I can't use your nursery. I was like, oh, I'm saying that all the time. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to buy this course. And I took your course, and it was like I finished it in a day and I had it up and running, and I pretty much knew what I was doing. And then I did blow up your DMs. I did ask you a ton of questions. You were so
Love
patient
that.
and kind, and I just, so I want to talk about that I took your course and I loved it. And I want to demystify something because I know a lot of people that hear that they're like, well, now I got to move something around. You don't. You set it up in the
Yeah.
room, and then you're good and you can move around. And my brain, natural light brain, was like, oh, I'm gonna have to move that around. But you have it in a way where your setup is easy. So you use the MagMod system and a
I do. And I
small,
see you're standing up behind us in your
yeah, it's right
screen.
behind me. And it's easy to do.
Yeah.
And it's Flash was very intimidating. It still is to me a little bit, but
Yes.
it was very intimidating to me. But once I saw your setup and how you just set it up, and then when you did go into a room, you moved it. But like you said, like you're going to be doing that anyway. Like there is
Yes.
a moment of transition. So tell me a little bit about that, about your setup and how easy it is, and that you're not moving this thing around. You just set it up and then you're set.
Yes, I think in my course I referred to it as it's the crock pot of setups. So you said
Yeah.
kind of set it and forget it. So when you walk
Yeah.
into a room, you have one light on one stand. And I teach a method where you're lighting the room, not the people. Because let's face it, if you are lighting your subject, you have to move that light around when your subject moves. And that is not realistic if you are a lifestyle photographer who has any kind of toddlers or even bigger kids, not even toddlers. My kids don't stay in one place either, and they're 7, 9, and 12. If you have moving subjects, children, I don't think it's realistic to, unless you're in a studio setting again with a backdrop where you're mostly stationary in one spot, I don't think it's realistic to be lighting the people. So instead, I teach a way that lights the room. So you basically walk into a room and you're like, if I was building this room from scratch, how would I want the windows to be constructed? Like if I was the contractor and I wanted this to be a perfectly lit space for photography, and you're creating light in a way that is beautiful for that whole room so that your toddlers can run around and jump on the bed and you can hop up on the bed and crouch down and get outside the door and come inside close and really move around in the way that you're accustomed to without having to worry about the light because the light is set for the room. So then, yes, when you transition, let's say you're done with the primary bedroom, you've done all your combos that you want to get, and you want to go into the baby's nursery or the family room or wherever it is, you do have to pick up the stand and take it with you and adjust your settings to light that new room. But I try to think of it in the same way that, you know, you're going to adjust your settings on your camera when you're in a room, and then the next room is going to have totally different light, and you're going to have to adjust those settings again. It's kind of like that. It's just an extension of your settings that you have to set for each different room that you go in. But like I said to someone, it's not, if you think in your brain about how you do a session, you're not running back and forth from room to room. You're usually like, okay, let's, baby's really happy in mom's arms right now. So let's all go to the primary bed and snuggle and do all the combos there. And then, baby's doing well. So you decide to do nursery next and do all those like solo shots in the crib and stuff like that. You're not going like, okay, here, then there, then back and forth. It's just, that's not really how the flow of a session works. You do kind of group yourself in one room for a while, then move to another one, then move on to another. So I think it's a totally realistic method for feeling like unencumbered during a newborn session.
I think it actually makes it better because before I was actually more sporadic, and now that I do have your system, I'm like, I'm staying here and we're doing this, and then we're going to
Yeah.
move on. Now, of course, if I
Yeah.
have, an older sibling that's a toddler and they're running around, I usually just let them have a break and I'll,
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Let them run and get a
and
snack and come back.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
loose schedule. But if I'm like, I'm gonna pick the primary room first, and we're gonna go in the living area, and then the nursery, like I feel like I have so much more control now than I
Yes.
did before. And I thought I
And I
had
know,
control before by not having it, but I was
yeah.
actually the opposite.
Yeah. And I feel like then you're married to these windows and you're constantly
Hard.
trying to coax this running toddler to come back and hug the window if it's a dark day or not a well-lit house.
Yeah.
But then I think you, and I'm sure you have realized this too, but learning off-camera flash and learning how to use it in a lifestyle or in-home family session, it can translate to any genre. So I never go to any brand session without it. And I'm sure you probably use the same method during brand sessions
Oh
too.
yeah.
And brands sometimes their offices or workspaces are even worse than people's
Oh,
homes.
they are.
So yeah.
Yeah, we usually rent, I encourage them to rent a home on Peerspace to match their vibe and things like that. And that
Yeah.
usually works well for my clients. But even that, I can have this beautiful high-end home and I'll still
Yeah.
use it because I'm like,
Yeah.
I just feel like I get a better result at the end. So,
Yeah.
and then I did an acupuncture clinic, and I think that was the first time I brought it, and I was so terrified, and it helped so much. And I think I showed you a few, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can
Yes.
see the reflection in one of these photos on the wall. You're like, but that would be a normal thing. There's a window there, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I just was so
Yeah.
afraid that it was flash,
I
and
think
it
we
just
get in our heads about flash. Like
oh for
somebody,
sure.
one of my other students said something like, "Oh, but I can see like a little bit of a shadow behind a subject." And I said, "Yeah, but it's because you are obsessing about the fact that it's flash. Because if there was a window there and you had strong side light coming in, there would be a shadow behind your
Hmm.
subject too. That's just how light works. It doesn't matter if it's coming artificially from the sun. Like there are things that I think we hyper focus on because we're nervous about flash or because we're not as used to it because we haven't used it for as long as we've used natural light. But it basically enables you to create beautiful light in all situations, whether, yeah, you're in a acupuncture clinic, some of the rooms have no windows. I recently did a photo shoot for a healthcare company in Massachusetts, and they wanted some photos in an MRI suite, which had zero windows to the outside. So I was so thankful that I felt skilled enough to say yes to that job because I knew that I could light the room with flash, and not have to try to make something terrible of, using overhead fluorescent lights.
Yeah, and I saw those. They turned out beautiful. So it
Thank
just
you.
is a testament to what you teach. So it's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think, when you say we worry about all these things because we're so nervous about flash, like I've heard people say, what about color casts and what about this and what about that? And it's like it's just another source. This is what I tell myself. It's just another
Yeah.
source of light. It's lighting the room. I'm not doing anything crazy. Like it's just
No.
giving more light. So I try to just focus on that. Like don't let your brain go over here, Jamie. It's
Yeah.
just a way to light the room.
No, I know. And yes, could you carry around a bunch of gels and when you're in a room with blue walls, put a, gold tone gel on it to counteract it so that it comes out of your camera? Yes, you could. But to me, that is so much effort and thought
Hmm.
that I would equate to somebody who's working in a studio session who can
Hmm.
control all the factors and maybe they are able to get an absolutely perfect image straight out of camera. And if that's their goal and they're only making those like 10 perfect images because that's their style, that's great. Are there tools out there to counteract everything? Absolutely. But I don't think that that's realistic to go into the type of in home lifestyle setting. I am teaching how to use this in a way that is sustainable for this type of session without you feeling encumbered. And the bottom line is that, like you said, if you are in a nursery with pink walls and you're only using natural light and the light's coming in, you're going to get a little bit of a pink cast.
Right.
But it's not anything that I've ever had trouble adjusting in, post processing with the white balance. In fact, here's a little plug for Imagine. They all come out with near
Mhm.
perfect white balance all the time. I mean, sometimes I have to tweak it a little bit, but I can remember distinctly. This probably was like 2017 or 18 before I started using Flash. I had the absolute worst newborn color cast. They had white walls, but it must have been the green leaves from outside the window, but everyone legit looked like an alien. And that's the only time I can remember having a terrible color cast that I struggled with, and that was with just natural light. So I think
Same.
anything is going to create a color cast, yes. But if it's fixable and this method allows you to be the type of lifestyle photographer you want to be, I think that that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And you kind of already answered this question. I was going to ask you who is this course for? Like for me, I'll say like I'm family, newborn, maternity. I do mostly
Yeah.
outdoors. Obviously, my newborns are indoors. And I was somebody that was like, okay, I need to figure this out, but I really don't want to do it. And I think, as a student, I would say that's who it's for. But who do you
Yes.
find are your students and that are really excited about using it after they finish your course?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's for anybody who is afraid to try Flash, is not a Flash expert, feels like it's too complicated for them, who
Mm-hmm.
photographs inside in a lifestyle type setting, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
families, newborns, brands, anything that happens indoors. And they're looking for a method that would work easily for a lifestyle flow where they're not going to feel fixed to one place, and they want just, a way to make it easy to continue the type of photography that they like to do indoors without a lot of complicated equipment. I think it works
Yeah.
really well for that, and it's an actionable method that somebody can, like you said, watch really quickly and try it
Mm-hmm.
in their next session. And I think the people that appreciate it the most are those who have found themselves kind of walking through their homes or businesses or wherever it is and saying like, okay, well, the light looks good over here, but I don't think we'll be able to use this corner, but that's okay. We'll try to move
Mm-hmm.
things or set up over here. Anytime that you feel like the light is giving you constraints during your session, that's who it could really be helpful for.
Yeah. So, what inspired you to create this course? Like, why was it important for you to create something that was, I will say, non-techie, flash course for photographers?
I think because I'm not techie. So
Mhm.
my husband is like a computer. I mean, he like builds computers from scratch. He's really into that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
running joke that like I don't even know how to update my camera's firmware. I'm like, "Can you fix this?" I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never been a techie person. I'm not good at that stuff. Um so I think when I realized how my life and business had changed when I figured out how to use off camera flash in a way that was beautiful, I, during that process of learning it, looked around for so many courses and felt like all of them out there were so technical. And I
Yeah.
took some, but they were mostly focused on, like, I took a few through Click and Moms, I would say. And they were mostly focused on, yeah, there would be like a section on how to create dramatic light outside, with the subject lit and the sunset in the background. But that wasn't my style. I didn't want that. Or it was very technical on how to create like Rembrandt lighting versus this lighting for this. And there wasn't anything out there that was focused on how to create flash that didn't look like flash. And that was what I really wanted. I wanted something that taught how to make flash look exactly like natural light so that it wasn't apparent that it was flash, because the whole reason this came about in the first place is because I felt guilty coming home from a session where the light was so bad that I didn't feel like I could give my quality to this family. And it made
Yeah.
me feel bad because it's not their fault that they don't have
Right.
good windows or had terrible light. They didn't build the house. And an average person who's not a photographer, I don't believe knows that they have bad light going in. So they
Right.
booked me assuming that I can create what I show in my portfolio. And I
Right.
went home feeling like I couldn't and that I should be better at that. So I wanted to create a course that could help other people in a non-technical way figure out how to do it in the same way that I felt lost when I was trying to look for education to create that type of light.
Well, I'm so glad you did it because I looked and I couldn't find anything. And then I've even had friends help me and it wasn't them, it was like my brain just does not work like that. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to figure this out. I'm never going to learn this. I'm never going to figure it out. I don't want to figure it out. All I wanted to do was
Yeah.
just make it look good. So I
No,
loved
I know.
that you created it because it was like bada bing, bada boom. There, I have it. I had to practice, and I
Yes.
practiced on my family, but it really was so simple.
Well, what you just said that your brain was like is exactly what my brain was like. So
Uh-huh.
I'm betting that a lot of people feel that exact same way.
Yeah. What do most of your students say when they finish your course? What do you hear mostly from them?
I think that they're surprised at how easy it is, the method,
Yeah.
and that they fully understand it, but also that they're scared to bring it to a session, which I think is a totally normal
Yeah.
feeling to have. Because I think most people who are taking this are probably 5, 6 years into their business. They have, a booming lifestyle newborn business. And any time that you're learning something new when you've currently been an expert at what you're doing is scary. It's scary
Yeah.
to try to implement something different than you've done before. And when I teach, I tell people, like, think about back when you were just learning the exposure triangle on your DSLR and learning how to shoot in manual mode versus aperture priority or whatever it was that you were using, or full auto. it was so scary to even adjust the shutter speed. Like if you were at a
Right.
sunset session and the sun was going down and I was like, oh my God, I have to figure out if I'm going to raise my
Yeah.
ISO or lower my shutter speed. And what if I go too far or this? Everything that you're learning, especially when it comes down to something that's kind of technical, is
Mhm.
scary. So I always just encourage people, it, you can learn the method and you can understand it because it's easy. But until you start practicing, it's never going to feel comfortable until you do it over and over in the same way that when you were learning using your camera in manual. So I always remind people, just bring it to the session and tell
Mhm.
yourself that you're going to turn it on and you're going to try. And if you hate what's happening, turn it off and revert to what you were doing before. The clients don't know. You can just
Right.
be like, oh, I guess I didn't need that here. you
Yeah.
you can have it with you and try it out until you feel comfortable, but if at any point it's stressing you out too much, just shut it off and go back to what you
Hmm.
were doing before.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, you don't have to commit 100% to start.
Hmm.
You can go in and tell yourself you're going to try it in one room, and then
Hmm.
eventually when you practice enough it will come second nature.
Yeah. When I took it, I was like, okay, Jamie, this you've done it 1,000 times before. We're just gonna reach it's like you have. And I had to adjust it a little bit, but I was like,
Yeah.
wouldn't you have had to adjust it anyway? Like you would have had to you
Yes.
do the same thing. We just get in our heads. Like, I
I
say
think
that
we get
I have
nervous because it's like if you're in a room with a client and you
yeah.
go over and you set up the flash, like you have to walk over and adjust it or adjust it on your trigger if you have one that talks to each other. But
Hmm.
it feels more demonstrative, the adjustment, than
Yeah.
if you're like doing it behind your screen with a real
Right.
little, finger movement to adjust
Mhm.
your ISO. But yes, like you said, you're adjusting your exposure all the time. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. And I think if we get out of our heads, we realize that the client doesn't care. Like they
They
don't know.
don't
You
even
could adjust it a
notice.
hundred times and they can think
Yeah.
that that's perfectly normal while you're chatting away with
Mhm.
them or while they're brushing their hair or getting their toddler, zipped up.
Mhm.
Um, I think we feel like we're on display or like we're doing something wrong, but everybody
Yeah.
adjusts it in every room. We're not in a
Yeah.
studio. We don't know exactly how the light is going to look. It takes adjustment.
Hmm. Something I say, and I said this at my career, was a dental hygienist for a very long time, and I was very confident. I was like, "There's nothing that could come my way that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable." And I remember people looking at me sometimes if I was temping, and I was moving things around, and I could tell on the look of their face they would look at me like, "Does she know what she's doing?" And I would say, "I know what I'm doing, but I'm in a different kitchen." That's it. And I would make a joke and I wouldn't care because I knew what I was doing. So
Yeah.
now when I go into places and nobody cares, like you said, but if I'm feeling like, oh, they're looking at me or something, I'm like, I promise I know what I'm doing. I'm just making sure it looks perfect. I do this all the time. And they're like, oh, okay. And they probably don't even care. But that is something I say out loud if I'm like feeling nervous or something. But most of the time, especially new parents or,
Yeah.
they really don't care. They're just sitting
No.
there doing their
And
thing. And brands, they're nervous. They don't care. They
no, I
you are
know. And
you.
think about it. I mean, you know this, I'm sure. Like, think about being at a family session outdoors. There might be a place that you think is going to be great or a pose that you think is going to look good. And then
Mhm.
you do it and you look behind your camera and you're like, oh, the light is actually really terrible here. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. You just move
Yeah.
on. Do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I
we're
do
going
that
to
all
do
the
that
time.
again. Turn this way for me. I want to make sure it's
Yeah.
perfect. Like, as long
Yep.
as you present whatever you're doing with confidence, which I think comes with experience, um, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
We all
Yeah.
try things that don't work.
Hmm. Yeah. And I say that all the time at my family sessions. I'm like, oh, just kidding. That looks awful. Let's go over here.
Yeah,
And now I don't
exactly.
care because I feel
Exactly.
confident. They're like, oh, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Because
exactly.
you know innately that you are making sure that you
Hmm.
give them the best product possible, and you know how
Right.
to fix it. If it doesn't look right at first, and it's the same thing that you're doing with Flash. It just feels more pressure because you're not used to doing it.
Right. Yeah. So I want to switch gears just a little bit before we wrap
Yeah,
up. I want you to talk about how this is so helpful for brand photographers. You did kind of touch on that a little bit, but that is something that I think you absolutely have to take your course if you are a brand photographer or you're new to brand photography and you're like, when I finished learning more about it, I was like, oh crap, now I got to learn about Flash. Like why is that so important for them to take your course? Because where they're going to be at. Can you dive into that a little bit?
yeah. I mean, I think, as I mentioned before, that yes, while an ideal client would go and rent a beautiful home on Peer Space or
Hmm.
a beautiful studio space, at least in my experience with brand photography, that's maybe only 25% of the time. And a lot of
Yeah.
the other parts of the time, I am in a really unideal lighting situation. And it's because it's not typically somebody's home like you'd find in an in-home or a newborn session. I've been in like work rooms for, a pest control company. I've
Mhm.
been in MRI suites for that. I did an acupuncture clinic and we had treatment rooms that had no windows.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. I've been in the strangest lighting situations for brands. And that's because part of being a personal brand photographer is telling the story of that brand. So while some might work to rent a great studio, others, like for the acupuncture clinic, like, yes, did we take some great portraits like out in their like well lit office? Yes. But the other part of telling a brand story is showing them doing what it is they do with their clients, telling the story of their business. And your business doesn't always happen in well lit areas. Sometimes it's in a windowless treatment room. And I think it's up to us to make marketable, well lit images for that brand is going to use and put everywhere in all their spaces. We can't just be like, oh, sorry, we can't do photos in your treatment room. That's part of the story, an essential part of the story that we have to figure out how to light. So I think for brands, it's even more important. I did one for a Pilates studio where we were in this big kind of renovated old warehouse and they did have big windows. So some areas of the studio were lit, but then they also wanted to show all the facets of their business. So, yes, did we do some over on the equipment that was in the well lit area? But then, yes, but then we needed to do some in like the group class area because they wanted their instructors interacting with their subjects. And that couldn't happen over in the corner where there's big, heavy equipment. You can't always move things and rely on natural light. So I
Mhm.
think having the skills to be able to light space is so important, um, specifically for brand photography because, yeah, because of everything I said. There's just not. I think you're very rarely in a well lit space in comparison to how often you're in a well lit space for families.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the stress of having to reschedule, and when you walk into a
Oh
house
yeah,
and you're
no,
like, I can only use literally one room. Like, okay, yeah, I could pull that off, but if I don't have to, that's really nice. Like you
yeah,
said, you
that's
want
it.
to be able to give them that variety and use those areas that are important and special to them.
Yes, and that's a really good point that I didn't even mention is that even though it sucks when I used natural light, if I was had to reschedule a newborn session because of rain, like that's not ideal, but most of the time they were on parental leave and we could shift things around and it wasn't that big of a deal if we had to switch from a Wednesday to a Thursday. But
Mhm.
with brands, if you're booking these big brands that involve seven different people and they've rented a space and whatever it is, or they're doing it on the one day, like for this Pilates studio example, they're closed on Sundays, so we needed to do it on Sunday when they're not open to the public. It's not that easy to just be like, oh, it's a dark day, guess we're gonna have to like that makes you look unprofessional. I
Yeah.
think you have to be ready to be able to meet the needs of whatever you're given in terms of brand photography, even more so than families and newborns.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. It's just totally unrealistic to have to reschedule for that reason. And I live somewhere
Yes.
that's very dark and gloomy. I'm in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Where you're at, you get some dark and gloomy days too.
Yeah.
And it was just not, it was not realistic. And also when I wanted to niche up, I realized I'm going to have to figure something out because it's just not working.
Absolutely.
And then when I saw, I think you had a social media post or something on your website that says which one is flash and which one isn't. And I couldn't tell. And I was like, oh, okay. Like it
Yeah.
clicked. It's like, oh, it looks the same.
Yes.
Very, very similar. So yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
That's the goal.
Yeah, I love it. So before we wrap up, I want to talk about business just a little bit more
Yeah.
and your photography business and your education. So I want to talk about systems because I know somebody that's heard you kind of talk about that in the beginning. They're like, okay, maybe she, as she was growing, that's one thing. But now that you're at this point, you have to have systems in place to keep everything organized. How do you do that? And do you have like, in a nutshell, like what systems you're using to keep you sane?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have been a member of 17 Hats. That's my CRM, for probably 9 years now. I was an early adopter of that.
Mhm.
And I feel like that has also grown with me. At the beginning, I think I was only using it for scheduling, just to have my clients' information in there and to send them a contract. But now I rely so heavily on workflows, and I have workflows set up for each genre because if I was relying on my brain to remember everything that I needed to send to people, we would all be in bad shape. So I definitely have very extensive workflows, that remind me from everything to, if they haven't made their retainer payment yet, to sending out their questionnaire, sending out their location guide, sending their style guide, all the things that lead up to each genre's photo session. So workflows are essential. And then I do use Imagine for editing, which has helped my workflow tremendously, as well as Evoto if I'm doing skin retouching. So those two AI tools have changed my editing process tremendously, and helped me keep up with volume well. I still do my own culling, but then I'm able to put them through and they're able to help me, after many, many 18,000 images or whatever I have in there now, really hone in on my style perfectly.
Yeah.
And then I don't use a whole lot of things other than that. I use Photo Mechanic to help me cull faster.
Yeah.
Uh, Blog Stomp helps me,
Hmm.
resize my images for blogging.
Hmm.
But other than that, I pretty much do my own thing. I use Canva to help me with social media posts sometimes.
Hmm.
But that's about it from a systems standpoint.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me something that you stopped doing that freed up a lot of your time. Like you kind of touched on that just now, but is there something specific that you were doing in the past where you were like, that was such a time suck and I'm so glad I'm not doing it anymore?
Well, definitely hand editing. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know. I don't think I could give up the control for Imagine, but I think it's a happy medium for a control freak like myself. Because I did try outsourcing to a human, but I felt that it wasn't as accurate to my style. When I outsourced to a human, even though they did a great job, I felt like I was constantly tweaking when it came back.
Yeah.
Um, Imagine was a lot of work on the front end to get it to be my style, because you have to constantly tweak and send back feedback and all that. But now it feels exactly like me. And every so often, every few months, I'll edit one by hand with my preset
Mhm.
that I created and then test it against it. And it still is, I mean, nearly identical. So I think part of it was releasing that control and knowing that that's going to come out. I still look at every image, I go through and make sure because I do any kind of like Photoshop things that needs to be done after the fact. But just knowing that the white balance is going to come out being exactly the way that I usually create it, that was just freed up so much, I think, time that I spent tweaking and tweaking and tweaking to try to get certain images perfect. And then the other thing I would say is I think last year or 18 months ago, I implemented an online scheduler on my website. So not everyone uses it. They are more than welcome to inquire with me if they need to. But a lot of my repeat clients just book online now because they already know me. They know. So when I announce a seasonal opening, they'll just go ahead and book it and I'll see that come through. So I like having that option there too for someone who really does want the ease of booking online or has booked with me in the past and doesn't need to talk to me.
Mhm.
So I think that has helped cut down on a lot of back and forth as well.
Yeah, I like that, and that makes so much sense, and I think it takes a lot of pressure off of you.
It does. It does.
Mhm. Yeah, amazing. Well, you have built something incredible. You are so inspiring,
Thank
and
you.
I thank you so much for your time. I
I
want
appreciate it.
to talk about where people can find you and where they
Yeah.
can find your flash course.
Okay. Awesome. So, LyndsyHannahPhotography.com is my website. That's Lyndsay.
Mhm.
So a funny spelling of Lindsay, but I'm sure Jamie will link it. But
Mhm.
my flash course and my mentorships can be found on my For Photographers section of my website. And then you can find me on Instagram at Lyndsay Hannah Photography, or Lyndsay Hannah Brands. I have two handles, so they're separate for the two different genres.
Perfect. And last question. What
Yes,
would you say to a photographer who's listening that is on the fence about learning Flash?
I would say that I think it is a skill that is so usable in all scenarios that I can't imagine a situation where I wouldn't bring it with me now that I know what I do now. So even if you think, I don't know if it's for me, I don't know if I would use it, I think
Mhm.
if you learned the skills, you'd be surprised. I think the situations that you'd want to use it would open your eyes to how you can make better photos in any of the situations that you were getting by fine without it before. I think it kind of pushes you to a level where you realize that you can create so much more. So I would encourage somebody to try it, even if they don't think they're going to use it most of the time. They
Yeah.
might have it with them in that one scenario where they have it in their back pocket and they're like, oh my God, thank God I have this.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't use it a ton. I use it just a handful of times during the year
Yeah.
usually, and I'm very grateful I
But
have it.
whenever you need to, you're like, phew.
Yeah, it's right, but
Yeah.
like it's always behind me. And like
Yeah.
I have a newborn coming up this weekend, and I'm gonna refresh myself, and I'm just gonna, charge it up. I'll practice on my kids
Yep.
again, and then I know it'll come back quickly. But yeah, it is just almost essential to have, in my opinion. It's
It
been so
really is. Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. I so
Thank
appreciate
you,
your time.
Jamie. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.